Hi, this is Ken McCarthy, and welcome to the Jazz on the Tube podcast. This is when we like to talk with people that are involved in the music. Typically, we focus on people who are, quote, behind the scenes, but sometimes people that do things behind the scenes are also musicians, and this is the case today. We're going to be talking with someone who I first heard at a local club. Some people know I live up in Tivoli, which is in the Hudson Valley. To place where that is, Sonny Rollins used to live just a mile up the road in Germantown, and Jack DeJohnette and Pat Metheny and guys like that live across the river over in Woodstock. So we're in the country, but there's a lot of jazz, and there's a great club called the Falcon, which is in Marlboro, New York, and it's such a good club. I recommend coming up from the city and getting a room just so you can hang out, enjoy the fresh air, and hear the great music. And one of the great bands that I heard there, and I've heard so much amazing music there, is a group called the Controlling Ear Unit, and it's led by Luis Perdomo, who's a pianist from Venezuela. On drums was Rudy Royston, and on bass was Mimi Jones. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed that group. They've been playing together for, I think it's, I'm going to throw out a number, and our guest can correct me a little later, but I think they've been playing together for 20 years. Is that right, Mimi?
Yeah, it's been about, I would say it's about 4.
It's how many?
About 4 years.
Oh, 4 years, but you've known all those guys for a while, right?
Yeah, we've known each other for a while. I think Luis officially gave it a name about 4 years ago when he decided that, he just wanted to have something put together. You can strike all that. I didn't like that. I'm sorry.
What's that?
I don't know if you want to use all that.
Okay, maybe we'll start all over again. I'm misunderstood. I thought you've been playing together forever. I mean, not under that name.
We have, but when you say Controlling Ear Unit, it literally started like 4 or 5 years ago. If you just say, have you guys been playing? Well, damn, I've been playing with him like 16 years, something like that.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, it's good to be accurate. But the point I want to make about that is that, jazz, we think of jazz as art of virtuosity, and it certainly is. And you can't get in the game unless you develop virtuosity. But there's another dimension to jazz, which is when musicians have been playing together, when great musicians have been playing together for a long time. There's this other dimension that you can't really articulate, but it's there. And what I want to say about Controlling Ear Unit, even though it's only 4 years old as a unit, the members have known and played with each other for a long time, and it really shows. There's a lot of magic in this band, in my opinion, and if you get a chance to see it, go see it. And I was particularly glad for the experience because I got to see Mimi perform for the first time, which was a great experience too. And I've now learned some about other things that she's involved in that are fascinating, and we're going to get into all that in this call. But first, one thing I always like to talk with musicians about is their development, because as fans or as listeners, we see the finished product. We don't know all that a person goes through to first be introduced to jazz and then embrace the art and then develop in the art. And to me, it's always a fascinating story. It's always a little different in each case. And it's a very important story, too, because if we want to support the music, we need to know what the young musicians need as they're developing. So that's why I love to ask our guest artists about their history in the music. So, Mimi, can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you were born, your family, how you first got introduced to music, your first love in music, and your first experiences as a student, and then take it from there?
Sure. Thank you, Ken. I was born in New York City. I was raised in the Bronx, and I would have to give it to my parents for playing music on Sundays while we had to do our chores and clean. My parents would always have music going, and it could be anything from, Earth, Wind and Fire, Al Green, to John Coltrane. Sometimes my mom would have, like, Willie Nelson or Dolly Parton, Paul Simon, Simon and Garfunkel, like it was just so random. And they would always end up on Miles Davis. I swear that was the thing that I grew up, like when I think of my childhood music, I have to give it to Miles. So he kind of got embedded in me when I didn't realize what was happening. And I was rebelling at the age of, because I told my dad around when I was 12, I want to play rock guitar with Michael Jackson. So, of course, he looked at me like, okay. And he was like, we got to get you into a school. And he ended up sending me to the Harlem School of the Arts. At that time, there weren't a lot of options in the Bronx. So we went down to St. Nicholas Avenue, 145th Street. And I was like a kid in a candy store. This was the first time I had been in an art, completely all of the disciplines of the art right there in front of you, from painting to chorus to different types of dance, guitar, all the instruments. It was amazing. And you could choose your schedule, which might include different disciplines. So I just went crazy. And I chose everything at some point. It was like I lived there. That was like my house at some point. And I ended up auditioning on guitar because that was, I was still focusing. I wanted to get with Michael Jackson, but I had to learn this classical music first, I was told. Mm-hmm. And I ended up auditioning for high school. My first teacher actually was Mr. Jim Bartow, and he was amazing. He was renowned for, taking kids in the neighborhood and creating these guitar ensembles, which it was so unexpected. And so we would go and do talent shows and competitions, and I ended up winning all these awards. So anyway, fast forward to high school, I was so excited to get there. I begged my mom, I want to go to LaGuardia High School, Music and Art. I got to audition. Got ready. I got in, and there was no teacher for guitar. So they immediately were like, well, switch to an orchestral instrument. I chose the one that I thought might be like the guitar, which was the cello, which I love, but I had no voice on it. And during a practice period when I was supposed to be, shedding my Bach and stuff, I was fooling around with my friend Emily's bass in the mirror, spinning it around and playing the Barney Miller thing and thinking that was so cool. And one day I was spotted doing this because it was my ritual, and the jazz director at the time was Mr. Justin DeChocho. He later on became the director at Manhattan School of Music, but going back, he was like, oh, you play bass, you read bass clef. We need a bass player. Would you please come and join the band? And I was like, he's like, you're in. So that was the end of that. And from that day on, I've been playing jazz bass. From there, I started taking private lessons. I was recommended to study with Miss Linda McKnight, a great bassist and a professor. She was professionally playing in a few different orchestras in the New York and New Jersey area. And then she was the professor for many years for the classical bassist at Manhattan School of Music. So that was my introduction to really getting my technique together, because with bass you can't really, finagle it. You will hurt yourself. So I had to get that fiddle, all the Simandl books and classical things going. And she, with the help of Rodney Jones, wonderful person and great guitarist, helped me to get to the audition and get a scholarship for Manhattan School of Music. So I graduated from high school, went to college in New York City. I stayed here because at that time, so there was a duo life kind of going on. Maybe when I was 17 years old. So I was in the jazz department. I was studying with a classical teacher, but then I started going to Jazzmobile to further my jazz classes. And that's where I met my third teacher, Mr. Lyle Atkinson, great bass player. He played with Betty Carter and just everybody under the sun. And he gifted me a bass because I hadn't had my own bass up until then, yeah. And so
Wow.
at that point, I was like, okay, this is what I am supposed to do. It feels right, and I'm having fun. It's huge and weird, and I get teased every day, why don't you play the flute? You know that phrase. But it felt right. And so I started taking lessons at Jazzmobile, and that opened up a whole new door, because at Jazzmobile you might be studying with great guitarist Ted Dunbar, teaching harmony, or Charles Davis, teaching us ensemble, great saxophonist. I think he passed away a few years ago. I also had the opportunity through the late, great Milton Hinton, who awarded me a scholarship to go to Jazz in July Jazz Camp. And that's where I met Yusuf Lateef and Max Roach. These were my band instructors, you know. So it was, I feel like I was so fortunate at that time, and all of the different people who have touched my life. I cannot leave out Mr. Barry Harris, because Barry Harris kicks ass. You know, it was, to this day, I still have to, like, think about all of the things that he has instilled in me. And, you know, he is still going strong. You know, I think he's almost 90. He is just, he really, really is passionate about the music and his students and stuff. So I would be dragging my bass around the city, you know, I would say from like 17 years old all the way up until I finished college. Let me see, 19, I'm dating myself, 94, yeah. So, and I also was a 3-time winner at the Apollo Theater for jazz, for a jazz ensemble. Yeah. When
really?
Were
you leading a group?
It was a collaboration. A really great drummer by the name of Jesse Hameen, and they call him Cheese. He kind of put this group together with his son, who was also a drummer, Jesse Hameen III, and Mr. Myron Walden, great saxophonist. We were a trio, you know, we practiced together. I never thought about the fact that there was no chordal instrument in the group. You know, now I'm like, oh, shoot, trio, that's a different sound. I got to practice. But we used to shed trio, saxophone, drums, and bass, and we had the opportunity to audition, and we got it, and we kept winning, you know. So that was kind of a nice little, like, tell of, like, wow, you can actually get paid to do something you really love to do, you know, having fun doing music. So by the time I graduated from Manhattan School of Music, I was whisked out. I graduated, I didn't get to go to the ceremony because I got called to do my first tour in Japan, which was like a 2-month tour, just touring Japan. So it, you know, it got started right away. It hasn't stopped. You know,
the world needed a bass player.
I guess so.
Yeah, and just so folks have a sense, too, in addition to all your many projects, and Mimi's involved in so many different things, we won't even be able to describe them all, but we're going to just talk about the film that she's working on and this wonderful jazz jam session lab thing that she's developed. But could you just tell people some of the musicians that you've played for, you know, as a side person? Some of the big names, just so people get a sense of where you're at.
Well, a band that I've been in for, I would have to say 15 years now, and I'm really happy to be in it when she calls me, is Tia Fuller. So she has the Tia Fuller Quartet, so I'm a member of that. I've also played with the great Terry Lynn Carrington, drummer and composer extraordinaire. She does everything. She has a billion hats. I look up to her. Another person that I would say reminds me of Terry Lynn, but she's more on the blues and funk side, is Toshi Reagan. Her mom is one of the founders and has been with Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Sweet Honey in the Rock, yeah.
Yes. And so, you know, that's a hardcore band unit that I've been a part of. I've also done some stuff for Beyonce, and there's another organization. It kind of happens annually, and it's called Black Girls Rock. It's like a BET presentation, and people like Alicia Keys and all these big names kind of come through there. So I had the opportunity of doing that last year. I played with let
me throw some names out at you. Dee Dee Bridgewater.
Yes, thank you.
Nona Hendrix. I have the advantage. I have it written down in front of me.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Nona Hendrix, Diane Reeves, and just a lot of people. Ravi Coltrane.
Right. Mhm.
And then you have your own music label called Hot Tone Music.
That's right. And I have another project that I didn't get to tell you about, Ken, and I'm really excited about it just for what it stands for, but also because it's so needed, like right now, like every day at every moment. So, we recently had all of these hurricanes happening in the world and earthquakes, and a lot of this, the research is, it's leading to like all the global warming that's going on and the issues that we have with the earth as humans, the destruction that we cause it, unfortunately. I have a group called The Dome Experience. And what that is it's actually, the name Dome is an acronym for Dance, Orchestration, Media, and Environment. And basically we compose music. My friend and I, a great pianist composer, her name is Arco Edith Sandoval. We got together. We were like, if we were rich, we'd be philanthropists, but we don't have a lot of money yet, so we will use the music. And we put together an orchestra, orchestrated the music that we composed, which is inspired by, and we compose music to environmental and social issues. So what does that mean? That's if something's going on in the world, we like to bring attention to it. It may be in the form of just tapping into someone's senses, So we just had the hurricane. We're actually preparing for a relief concert to raise money to, help in the different places that were destroyed. But, really bringing awareness to, we need to pay attention. What can one person do to make a difference? Is it like recycling? Will that help? Is it, dealing with, getting an electric car, or going to your local community board and talking about as a group, as a community, what you can do to better the earth. And then the social side has to do more with just issues that are going on. Like, so where I grew up, I told you I had to basically go to Manhattan to study. I grew up in the hood, and what was happening in my area was a lot of drug dealing, and which led to a lot of gun possession, which leads to, a lot of gun violence in these urban areas. And so the social side of it may be something like, how do we switch out those guns for trying to, like, bringing an awareness to people to say, like, instead of being violent, let's make music, let's make art, let's inspire kids to come and sign up for something. That's the main thing. It's not just to come to our concerts and say, oh, that was lovely, be inspired, and then do nothing. We are attaching ourselves to different organizations that may need help expressing their need and to make a change in the world. And the other thing is, like, we have veterans who, they fight for the country, and I'm not really for war, but I know it's complicated, and so I do appreciate being protected to a certain degree. And so those veterans, they come back, and a lot of them are not taken care of. They're not decompressed to be back into society, and they're just left. So, we want to pair up with, like, programs that and help raise money for these organizations through our concerts, and also bringing awareness to people. It was so funny because one concert we were explaining to the group, mind you, it's like a group of 40 people, and when we condense it can be 20. But our group, we were explaining what the song was about because I wrote this song called Patriot, and one of the saxophonists immediately got up and he was like, "This is me." And we were like, "What do you mean? You're a saxophonist?" He's like, "No, I served. I served in the Gulf War." And he has pictures on his phone. He was in tears, so we dedicated the concert to him. But that's what I mean. There are all these issues that, we're walking around as humans and we kind of become a little bit, immune, because there's so much going on. Our senses kind of go down. And I think it's important to remind yourself to be thankful for certain things, and also each of us has a duty, to make this place better than when we found it, So
and that's
called the Dome experience.
The Dome experience.
Yes.
Wow. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about that a little bit. There's another project that you're working on that's been an ongoing project that you call the Lab.
Yes.
And I went to one lab, but I have to be in bed before the sun rises, so so I couldn't stay too long. But it is. I tell you, it was at Smoke.
Smoke Jazz Club. Mm-hmm.
Smoke Jazz Club, which is on the way Upper West Side, and I just got to tell you, one of the highlight jazz experiences of my life. Now, you may not have thought, that you just thought it was just another night, but for me, I loved it. There were a bunch of musicians. Different people would sit in on the drums. Different people would sit in on the piano, and it was just a beautiful evening. And I encourage everybody, keep an eye out for these lab sessions, and if you can go to one, if it's not too late past your bedtime, you got to go. You just have to go. You will never regret it. You're gonna be happy you went. So tell me about how that came together. Now, earlier we had spoken about the challenges that, there's the challenge of learning your instrument and finding mentors, but then there's the challenge of finding opportunities to play, and that's not automatic for the young jazz musician or the old jazz musician.
Right. Well, one thing that was instilled in me, I've had some really great teachers, like Mr. Lowell Atkinson. He was hardcore. He really needed to make sure that my sound was right, and I learned the instrument. Ron Carter, he would be on my back about being on time and the discipline that it took, So there's like a fine line between the love that you have, where you're sort of like, I'm making music, this is great, and the desire to want to be better. And when you listen to the masters on old recordings, it's just like you're aiming, you have that in your head. And we wanted to create a safe space where people could come and feel like it's okay to try to go for it. Like, you're not going to just come in the session and play cool, just because everybody's looking at you. But at the same time, you're going to get your butt kicked, but we're going to hug you while we're kicking your butt. Something like that. And we wanted to make sure that the space was user-friendly for everyone, no matter what age you were. So you may have, like, on the bandstand, you may have some kids that are just coming out of high school, and then you may have like a 70-year-old who's just hanging out, or it's after his gig and he just wants to come, keep his fingers warm or whatever. Also gender friendly, I think you might know from the different interviews that you do at this point that women in music, that's a whole nother topic, but sometimes we're not really invited in the same space as men. It just doesn't feel the same. And I mean, honestly, it's nature. By nature, we're different beings. I think it's important that women are somewhat aggressive about what it is that they want, and they get up and they go for it, but at the same time, they're also not marginalized and seen as just looking at the way they look, or what are you going to do for me, or you're so cute, not to have to overplay to make an impression, or because the sessions, they seem to be, and I don't know, I've just gone to them in New York City, but they seem to be very cliquish. So it's like the club of blah, 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 we won't give it a name. If you don't look like this, then you could be sitting there all night even though your name is on the list. Or you don't know this person, or it's because this person knows all these people, they get to skip the person who was sitting there. So at the lab, we try to make it this fun experience where I'm literally sitting there doing what I usually have to do when I get hired to teach in a university, where I'm combining the band based on who's in the audience, who wants to sit in. So I'll go pick on like a seasoned musician, and they'll be excited to play. But then I'll have to, at some point, sandwich in a less seasoned musician, because if you have all, mediocre musicians, then it doesn't sound well. And then the one who sounds really good, he's like, I don't want to sit in. If you have all the cats up there at the same time, it's killing, but then the ones who really need to get in there and get their butt kicked don't get the chance. So it's like a real careful way of like putting together. And my partner in crime and buddy, great drummer Camille Gaynor-Jones, we're paired up doing it together, so that we're like double teaming them. Because the other thing is, when you come to see it, like someone like yourself, it can't just be like, oh, we're just wanking and practicing and just la la la, we're just jamming. It's a show. We want people to have a good time. So that music's got to sound good. There's a lot of networking that's going on in the audience. So many people have gotten gigs, maybe not even in relation to me, just coming because someone else was in the room, and they're like, oh, my God, it's a reunion. I've been looking for a violist that plays with 3 strings, something. I don't know. It's crazy what happens. And so we ended up calling it the Jam Party, because it's a lot of fun, whether you sit in or not. It's a lot of fun. So right now, we moved from Smoke. We were fortunate to have a residency for about 5 months there, and now we're at Fat Cat. The next date, I believe, is October 27th. So don't miss it, 10:30. It's late, but it's not that late.
Oh, that's not too bad. That's earlier than some of the other ones you've had.
Yeah. We've had 1 a.m.
Now, starting at 1 a.m. Oh, my God.
Sorry.
Hey, so Fat Cat's down in the West Village across from Blue Note? Or am I thinking of a different place?
It's kind of across, I would say it's across from 55 Bar. It's on the other side of 7th Avenue going west, very close to Smalls.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, so it's downtown, Fat Cat. Yeah, I strongly recommend if you're a New Yorker, you should definitely check it out. If you're visiting New York and you want to see something that you're not going to see back home, definitely go to one of these sessions. And now that it's at 10:30, I might even be able to go.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this film project you're working on. This is really exciting stuff. I want you to know that our Jazz on the Tube subscribers and viewers have been really supportive of film projects over the years. And one project called Tradition is a Temple, which was made about the New Orleans music scene, we turned out collectively to be one of the biggest supporters of that film. So when I saw clips of your film up in the Bronx not too long ago, I thought, oh, this is a film we can really get behind. So can you tell us what is it all about? What's the name of it, and what's the plan? And it's more than a plan. The film's underway, but tell us what's going on.
Well, the film is about an amazing pianist. She turned 80 years old this year, and her name is Bertha Hope. She happened to be married to the late, great Elmo Hope, and she's also a mother, I believe, of 3, and the daughter of one of the famous and first black actors in America. And she just has a very important legacy and story that I believe would inspire people when they watch it. Of different backgrounds, definitely it touches on being an American history. It would inspire all jazz musicians who are older, people who are older in general that just need a little pick-me-up in their life, to keep going, to say, it doesn't matter that I'm this age. There's still something for me. And I'm actually in the film, so my role in the film, I am who I am, actually, Mimi Jones. And but my role is like this younger musician who is looking up to Bertha and looking in reality, actually, in life for my next inspiration to get up, because this industry is like you have to self-motivate. You're self-employed. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a headspace where you spend a lot of time just having to get up and make things happen on your own, and then people get on board once, but it's not like, you just go punch a clock and that's it's not driven by a check every week that's going to come, or every 2 weeks. So, in the film, I decided to entitle it Seeking Hope, because I'm seeking hope, but I'm also seeking Miss Bertha Hope. And I'm hoping that she is also being inspired by me as well, as someone younger than her, a young woman, young African-American woman, So it's really been a lot of fun. It's a lot of work trying to put the film together, but as I said, I think it's necessary to promote history, a true history from a perspective of this African-American woman who decided to seek out being a pianist in America, a jazz pianist. And right now we are actually, right after I get off the phone with you, I'm leaving to go to sit down with the editor and the filmographer. And we're going to pull apart, because what you saw, Ken, was kind of like we put that together for a Women in Media in Newark festival, and they were adamant about having it. Miss Pamela Morgan, a mover and a shaker woman, she runs the festival, and every year she was like, I don't care how much you can get on there, I just need to have it. So we put together 30 minutes of it, but now we need to make it into a feature so that we can get it out there to independent film festivals and, places where it can get to the people, can get distributed. So that is where we're at. We're hoping to raise money. We just finished where I actually met you through Bobby Sanabria and Elena Martinez at the Bronx Heritage Music Center. Bronx Music Heritage Center.
Heritage Center, yep.
Yes.
I always have to remind myself, too. I always think of the Bronx Music Place, but it does have that formal name, Bronx Music Heritage Center. Yeah, that's it.
Center, right.
Center.
And
by the way,
that's
if I may jump in, that's another place that people should put on their radar. It's easy to get there. You get off at Freeman Street on the 2 or the 5 train, so getting there is no problem. It is what the name says. It's a center that pays homage to the incredible creative musical world of the Bronx, historically and today. That's really a subject of another call, but Mimi's a product of that, and believe me, she's not the only great musician that has come out of the Bronx over the decades. It's a very important musical center, and it's not on a lot of people's radars. I mean, possibly that's because, it's kind of a little bit of a curse, a blessing and a curse being near Manhattan. A blessing because you're near Manhattan and you can do a lot down there. A curse because it's got such a big shiny light on it that it's sort of, people don't necessarily see what's going on in other areas. But I want to talk a little bit about Bertha Hope, because this is a truly amazing human being, and her story is very important. She grew up in L.A., and in that very creative L.A. jazz scene. Mm-hmm. Some people are, maybe not aware. They don't maybe think of LA as a creative jazz scene, but it really, really is. It's right up there with any of the great cities for jazz. And she had the most remarkable upbringing. One of her childhood friends was Eric Dolphy, and she got piano lessons from Richie Powell, Bud Powell's brother. So this is somebody that got exposed to the music in a truly deep way. And one of the things that she talked about in the film, and it's such an important statement, is that she got to watch great drummer Max Roach, and I guess it was Clifford Brown, and Clifford Brown, and I guess Richie Powell, and that whole group. She got to watch them work and rehearse. And she used this very important word that I rarely hear mentioned when people talk about jazz, but they really should mention it a lot because it's one of the keys to jazz. And she used the word diligence, that she learned about this quality of diligence. And when you see great music on the stage, it's not just happening out of the blue or some spontaneous inspiration. It's the result of very diligent, painstaking, serious work behind the scenes. And I thought Miss Hope was really articulate in laying that out in the film, and I hope that stays in the film because that's something that I think would benefit all students to know, and even just fans to realize there's a lot that goes into making this music as good as it is. So this is the story of her life growing up in LA in those times. She as a teenager experienced bebop when it was brand new, and then the whole experience of developing a career and then maintaining a career. And as Mimi pointed out, there's nothing automatic about a jazz career. You've got to, it's kind of like you're building the road while you're driving on it. And that kind of never ends. It's a very challenging career from a career point of view, independent of the creative challenges, which are a whole nother issue, but just the logistics of building and maintaining and expanding a career, there's a lot involved. So you get to see this experience of being a jazz musician through the eyes of this remarkable woman with a remarkable history. It's a really important American story. It's a really important story for jazz fans. You know, we've got to document these things because, you know, we're all moving on. And, you know, that's sort of the basis of Jazz on the Tube, by the way. We're lucky that so much film has been shot over the years. We can see Louis Armstrong playing. We can see Lester Young playing. We can see Charlie Parker. We can see Eric Dolphy and John Coltrane because somebody set up a camera and shot it so that we have it now, you know. Otherwise, it would just be what we get from the records. So Mimi's doing a really important thing to document Bertha Hope's life. There's so many stories, it touches on so many aspects of our history. And so I just want to give this my strongest encouragement. You have a website called seekinghopefilm.com, and at some point people can go there and learn more about the film. I want to encourage everybody to find out more about this film. If you're able to support it, this is something absolutely worth supporting. I'll say that as somebody that's viewed, you know, thousands of hours of jazz film. I really want to see this film made, and I really want to see it out there, and I want to see a lot of people getting to see this story. So that's seekinghopefilm.com. Now, Mimi, I know you got a lot to do, and you gave us a lot of time, and thank you for sharing your story with us, and thank you for all you do. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So the next lab or the music, do you change the name from lab to music something else? What's the...
Are you talking about the lab session?
The lab session, yeah.
We're actually, as I said, on October 27th, we're starting our lab session jam tour. We got some backing, and we're going to take it to different cities around the States. And so that Fat Cat date is actually our first date of the tour. And we're going to bring it to you in different places because it's been getting a good review, you know, and it sounds like people really need to have it in their community. So we want to come to you. So that's then. Hopefully, also we'll be playing on October 12th. There's a fundraiser happening sponsored by a foundation called the Bailey Foundation. And that'll probably be on my website. So if you want to find out more about that. And then there will be a Dome Experience concert coming up in November. It will either be November 4th or 5th, and it'll be at this great space, another great space in the Bronx, called the Bronx Museum. And it's a beautiful museum, and so we will be there. We're trying to confirm the date now, but that's, something that's important because as you saw what just happened, with Hurricane Maria and the ones previously, it's really been crazy. So we want to do our part to try to, send aid and make sure it gets where it should go. We're not going to just collect the money and give it to a fund. I think we're actually going to try to travel and connect with some people that we know, musicians, probably at first, and people that are dealing in the arts to see how is it, because that's the question, is it better to give it to the leader of the group, and then they take care of the infrastructure, or do people need it individually? I think that's like the question that's kind of coming up. So these are social issues that we're trying to figure this out now.
Great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. And then you have the last thing is you've got your own website, and can you tell people the address for that website?
Sure. It's MimiJonesMusic.com.
Great. So that's MimiJonesMusic.com, and you can go there and read all about what Mimi's up to next, read a little bit more about her history and her training and all the experiences that she's had that's brought her to where she is right now. And this has been Ken McCarthy with Jazz on the Tube. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and definitely keep your eyes out for this very important film, Seeking Hope, and if you're able to support it, I strongly encourage you to do that. We're definitely going to support it here. All right, Mimi, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ken. Have a great day.